Sina Rahmani of East.
And we are live. Welcome to episode 16 of Axis of Resistance versus the Axis of
Epstein, right?
Epstein.
Adnan's actually gone for a little vacation on Epstein Island. They're trying to restart it. Gone for a Crusades conference. They finally got him.
Your sound is a bit low.
Okay.
I think Indi, see if you can.
Yeah, it's raining here. I don't want to burden you guys, but it's been raining all night. Stupid cat stayed out all night, came back, ate some chicken I put out for my son. That's what's going on in my life.
Sorry, everyone. My neighbor was here. He can't stop talking. Okay, ready to go?
It's like
Well-
that's what is that? Yeah, that's like a rock and a hard place, no? What's an immovable
Sina.
object means?
Hi, guys. Sorry.
No problem. I actually woke up Adnan.
Poor Adnan. Sorry.
Oh, no, and he launched the show. It's all on your neighbor, right? Okay, so let's start officially episode 16 of Axis. I had echoes so in my ears. Axis of Resistance versus Axis of Epstein. The episode's title for tonight is Iran Break the Siege. And as this title was volunteered by the great Sina Rahmani, we will ask you, Sina, to maybe speak to the title just after we introduce our special guest tonight, being Navid Farnia. You're a returning guest on this program, and you are a member of the Anti-Imperialist Scholars Collective. And yourself, you are Iranian, though living on Turtle Island at this point in time. So, welcome. Do we have a special fundraiser that we are pushing tonight, promoting tonight, Sina? Do you know about that?
Yes, I have
Okay,
it.
so-
I will present it in a few minutes. Sorry, I'm just getting
Excellent.
situated.
Excellent. So maybe we'll start with Navid then. What do you make of the recent developments, this ceasefire? Is it going to last? Trump has just left China, explaining to everybody that although President Xi said the US was a declining power, he really meant under Biden, because now, of course, it's the greatest, biggest country you've ever seen, economy you've ever seen, stock market you've ever seen, 401ks you've ever seen, and plus, of course, they have destroyed Venezuela, plus now have the greatest relationship you've ever seen with Venezuela, and they have destroyed Iran many times over, not finished, which we've never seen. That's something we actually have never seen and probably won't see. So, and at the same time, I think a few dozens of Chinese registered ships were escorted by the IRGC through the Strait of Hormuz. And the foreign minister of Iran has been telling his UAE counterparts, who apparently couldn't shut up about how bad Iran at the BRICS summit, that actions do have consequences, and further actions will have further consequences. So that is my roundup of the situation. And what is your perspective on all this, Navid?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you all again for having me on the show. Sina, good to be on with you, front of the screen this time for the first time. No gongs and stuff in the background. So yeah, Benji, I appreciate that introduction. I think that, I mean, it seems like this ceasefire, if you want to call it that, is not going to last much longer. I don't want to make any definitive predictions and anything like that, but There was the Zionists apparently have engaged in preparations. They're like prepared for continuing operations tomorrow, based on what I read. Yeah, I mean, the point that you made about Chinese ships being escorted across Hormuz, I think that's very important. The fact that Archie, he was in India today at a BRICS meeting, and he also met on the sidelines with Lavrov, Russia. It seems like things are percolating, I guess. Seems like things are going to move forward. Though, as we know, in Lebanon, things are already, they've been happening. Hezbollah has been doing excellent, and we can talk about that. In fact, I'd like to talk about that. But yeah, it seems like things are going to continue. The other thing that I read, I don't know if you all read, reports saying that Saudi offered a non-aggression pact to Iran. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, I read that.
But we'll see. We'll see if we move forward. And I'd also be interested to see what the terms are of such a proposed non-aggression pact, because I don't. We have to see what Iran would get out of such a deal as well. But it's interesting to see like the difference between how Saudi is handling the situation and how UAE is, and we can talk about like the different interests of those two entities / countries as well. But it's the Gulf countries are not unified at all, and so I think we need to talk about that as well. But those are my initial reactions. I think the military operations are going to begin again soon, but we'll see.
Indi, what's your take?
So about the military strikes, I actually wonder if the U.S. is like in position, because even moving everything in for last time was tough, and their supply chains were stretched, and now their supply chains are. I don't even understand how they function. Like, I don't understand where they're resupplying their ships and so on. But again, I'm not going to get into predicting, because like I always think, oh, that would be stupid, and then they do it. So maybe that's actually a good sign that they will do it, because it seems extra stupid right now. But then Israel is, and I love what Israel is doing now, because they're releasing stuff saying that MBZ basically picked Netanyahu up from the airport, which is like personally drove him back, and then UAE is trying to deny it. So I just love how Israel prepares for stuff like they're like, let's throw our allies under the bus first before we even get it started. But that's all. And if Saudi does a non-aggression pact with Iran, what Iran should ask for is, if you watch the flight patterns of all the bombing runs and even the refueling runs, because since the Iraqi resistance was resistant, they've been hugging the Iraq-Saudi border. So all the flights go along that flight path. If they don't have that flight path, then I don't even understand how they get there. I don't, because they can't get through Oman. They can't. Iraq isn't safe. Are they going to go through like Kazakhstan? So if there is a non-aggression pact with Saudi, then I don't want to predict, but I feel like that forecloses any sort of attack if they can't use Saudi airspace. But I guess it's all up in the air. But I'm loading up some Hezbollah videos, because like ceasefire, normally the ceasefire rule is, from Israel's perspective, you cease, we fire. That has not happened this time. Hezbollah has been firing constantly. I just published something on Hezbollah's like drone attacks with like dozens of videos, and then they've kind of made it redundant today by posting some more, which are qualitatively different. And I think it's another big, for me, the big paradigm shifts are tunnels, these smart missiles, and first-person drones. And this is just a big paradigm shift in war that happens. So if they want to restart the war with their like rusty-ass Gulf like whatever Desert Storm technology, they're facing a different type of war and a different type of resistance now.
Sorry, Indi, I didn't mean to undercut you were saying. I just want to.
No.
I want to point out how mad Adnan is, because I was late to the stream. he's okay. So Adnan could go back to sleep. Instead of going back to sleep, he's posting in the comments about how angry he is.
He's scrolling.
Sorry,
not
Adnan.
because you're late to the stream, but because I woke him up as
Oh, you woke him up. Oh, no.
Yeah, it's all my fault.
Let's wake him up. The people will wait. It's called Rockstar Time. You guys never heard of Rockstar Time? Come on, Benji.
Who's the
You gotta
rock star
make-
here? It's not you, Sina.
You wear the rock stars. Hello.
Oh, collectively.
I told Sina, we would take over his show and just
Okay,
have the
I have a
wildest of
reason.
wild parties
I have
and
I
drink
have
all
a
his
very
whiskey. and
chatty.
stuff.
I'm sorry. I have a very chatty neighbor. You get him started, and he's like a 70-year-old retired plumber, and he will tell you every story of every twist of the wrench he's ever made. And
You just bring him on, man. Just be like, I'm putting the camera on. Like I'm putting. Here's a
I was gonna say, bring him on.
Oh, don't.
Maybe he has
He's
some
amazing. So yeah.
opinions
Anyways,
about
I was just-
pipelines and stuff.
Yeah, sorry everyone. Sorry I'm late. We're here. Poor Adnan. I have to make it up to him. I'm just gonna chime in. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I think both. I've felt both the way that you guys were feeling. In the sense that, like, oh, this might be how will they? It's inevitable that they're going to restart it, but also how the hell will they restart it? It's impossible to restart it. Like we're in a strange moment where there's nothing new that they could do. Like, what, they're going to go and do the same thing over again? Like, what, they're going to try a super duper weapon now that they didn't try before? They're going to do like more fancy war crimes that they haven't done before? Like, what's left? And then on top of that, to lose even more of whatever, because they'll have to do something. Of course, the Zionists are itching to just see Iran destroyed, and anything unites them, but of course at the cost of everyone around them. And on top of that, we actually don't even know who was hitting the Gulf. Not bases. The American, those we know, Iranians were hitting them. But in terms of the oil infrastructure, it's still not apparent which Iranians, which ones Iranians claimed, which ones Iranians kind of winked claimed, and which ones that they disclaimed and they said, like, this wasn't us. Because there are parties in all of this that benefit from the sort of regional chaos. And there have been kind of statements here and there where people have said, oh, they're trying to sort of sow enmity between the region. So I'm kind of on both of I'm with both of you in a sense that there's no good first. I mean, I think it just reflects the fact that there's no good way out for the US. Everything is bitter for them from now on. The status quo is bitter. Going forward from this status quo is even more bitter for them, because seeing Iran break free of, and that's where this title comes from, break free of the sort of the American sort of chokehold, and on top of that inflict that chokehold upon the American world system, and which is what's happening right now, and the consequences of which we're seeing unfolding. So I think that overall doesn't change, even if they attack. If they don't attack, it's the same conclusion to all of this. So
But from Iran's side, they've said that where Marandi has said, if they attack, we're going to destroy all of the energy infrastructure in the region. Like he hasn't said anything wrong to me recently, like since or ever. But yeah, he was quite, and he told people to leave. He told people to leave Qatar, to leave not Saudi. He told people to leave UAE. He said these places would like not be inhabitable.
Yeah. There definitely have been aggressive statements from the Iranians. I'm not downplaying the tensions right now, but it's between Iran and the UAE specifically. In terms of, I think I've said this before and other, Adnan's still here. Adnan, do you want to just join the stream? Would you like to just join the stream, Adnan, since you seem to be awake?
No, I feel bad. I wanted to like tease him and say like the Crusades were good and he would get him all twitchy, but now I feel bad that he's like here.
He's still here. Can you go to sleep, Adnan? He's probably just jet lag still. I know he just got there. But yeah, I think it's there definitely have, and they've been saying that, oh, we consider UAE an enemy country. You know, their guys, their sort of social media guys, media figures have been taunting Iran. You definitely hear something. You know what it is, guys. It's like, you know, the way Zionists have a certain tone in their media, in their messaging. I hate that word, but whatever. Like they have a certain disgusting, like arrogance, hubris mixed with like a unearned bravado. And you notice the UAE guys imitating that now, like that guy Amjad Taha, I want to say, scumbag guy. And it's also like there's a complicating factor in all this, which is like Twitter is now. Before you didn't know, before the blue check mark thing and like monetization, you didn't know if people were like we're just rage baiting you, or we're like genuinely, you know, wallpaper chewing, whatever, like just like you didn't know. But now, well, you did know actually. Now you don't know. Now you don't know because you can directly monetize being a chud. Being like, oh, Somali people are subhuman, triggered. Like you can just do that, and you make $70, and scumbags of the world will do that. And so, in the midst of all this, we have to be careful that the worst people in the world are running this website, and they're all working to sow disinformation. So it's like it's a strange moment. I don't know. I haven't even looked. I haven't even looked at the Iranian stuff on this. I have not looked too closely, but it seems to me at least that Iran is it's in like a double-edged sword position. You can do all of this newfound flexing that you have now and be like, okay, it's the ride you enjoyed here of like Iran, the like no homers club of kicking Iran out and saying, oh no, Iran is out, is over. And it's now, you now have to like, we're going to be equals. We're going to be a party among equals. But you can now determine the life quality of your neighbors. Your neighbors will remember that. Your neighbors will be like, oh, when the Iranians had the upper hand, they starved us. Like and so now you have this problem of like, these are people who are going to be beside you forever. You can't just spoil the relationship with your neighbors. And so this is a strange dance that the Iranians are doing primarily for their own regional sort of interests. But those interests are like Iran first. How does this benefit Iran? And like maybe Oman. And that's it. So it's like a strange, this new, I've been calling, in my head, I've been like, this is a new muscular Iran. That's like unapologetic, that refuses. We're seeing now tankers go through, like just go through now. The American blockade, whatever it is, this seems kind of fake now. It's all becoming normal. I'll say it's interesting. It feels like this situation is becoming normal. And the more that happens, I think the odds of it starting up again go down, because the pain of the next round, I think Indi's right. The pain of the next round will be severe, and it will spin out into consequences and into like permutations that people really can't see. Like, why should these countries exist? Why should the UAE exist in such a scenario? Like, does it have to exist? No. Yeah. Like, no countries have to exist.
Yeah, Morandi said basically those countries will not exist.
They're not countries. But
Marandi said, like, you know, the days of Iran accepting any country in the region having close ties with the Zionists is over, right? So I think, you know, UAE does not have to exist. It used to be part of Oman, you know, so like, and I'm sure Iran would like that to be the case again. I'm sure Oman would like that to be the case.
Yeah, but make UAE Oman again, please.
Yeah, exactly. There's a couple of things I want to talk about. And sorry, Benji, I don't know if you want to go ahead and okay.
You go, I'm fine.
Okay, yeah. So, Sina, you brought up Somalia. I'm glad you brought up Somalia. I don't know if you all saw the news story yesterday that Somalia, they call it "quote unquote" Somali pirates, but like, you know, Somalian forces are demanding a $10 million payment for one of the ships that they seized in the I believe it was in the I don't know if y'all, but it's off the coast of Yemen, right? So I think we talked about this Somalia last time I was here. Somalia is engaging in operations, and I think that we need to continue to keep track of that. Indi, you mentioned like closing up of if Iran and Saudis make an agreement, closing up of Saudi's airspace, that's what Iran should demand. I totally agree with that. And I think, I think that's going to have to be part of the agreement, because for Iran, like, what else do they have to gain, right? Like, in terms of a non-aggression pact. We saw also last week, I believe, news came out that the Zionists have been using a military base, or they basically built a military base in Western Iraq to attack Iran during the war. So that, and so we'll see what else comes of that. But the other thing I want to say in response to will the U.S. attack or won't they? I'm actually interested in sort of gaming it out, right? Because if they don't attack, Hormuz is going to continue to stay closed for the U.S. and for Israel and for all of their allies, and oil prices are going to go up. And they're not, and they're fertilizers, like what's going to happen with fertilizers and all the other things that we've talked about. So if they don't attack, the continuing reality is going to be the continuing reality. If they do attack, as you all have said, it's not going to go well for them. And so if it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, we've seen in the past that the U.S. historically in those kinds of tight situations always leans toward aggression and attacks, right? And so to me, like, the kind of short-term thinking, particularly in this government, and that we've seen in the last year and a half, I think it shows me that there's going to be attacks. I don't think they want for it to be a long-term attack, but they're going to engage in some kind of escalation based on their past behavior. So,
breaking the siege is really what it's about, and the siege is being broken on the military front. It's being broken in terms of really establishing Iran as the new sheriff in town. And at this moment, for the first time since the Second World War, but even before that, white empire, whether based in London or in DC or somewhere between DC and occupied Yafo, is not in control of that stranglehold over the world's brown energy, right? And so the siege is broken there, and also it's broken in terms of narrative warfare. Like our friends at Explosive Media said it like a week ago. They said, that's it, we have actually broken the siege of information, and now everybody knows. And I saw today this announcement by Polymarket. It should really be called Ziono Market or something, and X to roll out an iron slop dome to counter AI slop on the platform. So all I can say is I wish them to be just as effective as the Zionist counterpart, right, of Iron Dome. And I think what's happening is, in the face of the strategic defeat on all their chosen battlefields, and the narrative one should never be discounted, because it really is theorized as their ultimate battlefield, which fits the kind of philosophical idealists that they are at the end of the day. The wars are closing in, as they used to say, and rats are starting to see how they can jump ship. So you see Robert Kagan. I mean, Robert Kagan, Victoria Nuland's husband, writing it so.
Should I pull up that article? It's kind of crazy. Yeah.
The other guy being Max Boot, also, one of the main cheerleaders for every single genocidal adventure of Empire, and it's breaking in different factions, and basically some of them are finally realizing that what's going on is what we called from the beginning suicide by axis of resistance. And of course, the inner contradictions, I'm with Navid on this one, of Empire are pushing it to just commit that suicide that may well be final. And those forces are largely based in occupied Yafo, but not only. And I believe this is how Milikovsky's recent behavior should be read, because there is something happening with Saudi Arabia. There was this op-ed by Al-Turki, I think is the name, who is one of the sons of King Fahd, but most importantly was the chief of Saudi intelligence, and is not known to speak out of his backside, right? And he literally wrote this op-ed where he explained that thanks to the Saudis, this had not degenerated. So he puts it a little bit in anti-Iranian language, but basically, he says very clearly, the Zionists tried to push us into a war against Iran. Read there that quite a few of the attacks on Saudi were actually Zionist or imperial force flags. And Milikovsky's reaction to this is to make sure that those who are, most complicit with the Zionists, being the UAE, can't escape. They can't jump ship. So that's my explanation as to why Milikovsky is saying, oh yeah, it was so great to do this secret trip on March 28 in the UAE. And I just love that, he came to pick me up. He's in his very own limo at the border and drove me back and everything. Because by doing this, he's basically telling them, okay, there is no exit now. You have only one way, is to double down, triple down, quadruple down, and be on this no reverse gear thing. And so that, I think, is what is happening. Meanwhile, Trump is trying to amuse himself globetrotting, but I think reality will soon come back and bite him on the backside. So things are not looking good for the empire. Iran is indeed being much more assertive than it used to be, but I think it's also more salient because they kind of have had the same kind of discourse from the beginning, but now they have put material battlefield and narrative reality behind it, which makes it more salient to us, because now it's not, oh yeah, another one of those, Western Asian power telling the world that they will kill everybody if you touch one hair of their head or whatever. So I think that's what is going on, and I would say it's all going according to plan. And in a way, the longer it takes for America to strike again, which I can't see how it cannot do it, the better it is for everybody, and the better it is for Iran, because all the time they keep on producing, they keep on reopening doors of the underground missile cities that had been, the entrances of which had been kind of bombed out, but it did nothing except from blocking the entrance and all the rest of it. And one last thing that I would like to say is my understanding is that the Iranian people is not backing down. The Iranian people is in the street every time, every night, every day. And that also counts for something. I think that it's not possible also for Iran to do a bad deal, which to me explains a lot of their attitude in those negotiations, like wait till the last minute to give a tweeted response to Trump that they could have given in the first 10 seconds of Trump's proposals. And then there's also finally the Chinese 4 points plan, which is a beautiful Chinese diplomacy. If you actually apply it to the letter, then we are back to actual international law. It's the end of the rules-based order. And we're looking at reparations for Iran. We're looking at the end of illegal sanctions under international law for Iran, and we're looking at the most complete and total strategic defeat of white empire for the past 500 years.
That's an interesting perspective to say that what explosive media is saying, that the siege is actually being broken. We talk about it in terms of Hormuz being closed, but Hormuz was effectively closed to Iran for 50 years. So what they're really doing is reopening it, and they're reopening it under, honestly, quite reasonable terms. In Sri Lanka, Iran helped us build our only refinery, and it's built for that stuff. But then we, at various points, we haven't been able to import that particular oil. We've had to trade tea for oil to sort of get around sanctions at some point. It hasn't Hormuz hasn't been open for us. And if you zoom out probably too far, but if you look at Somalia, what they're asserting, what Iran is asserting, that's what was here before the White Empire came, before the Portuguese came and locked down everything with forts and with basically head shopping. Like, there was free trade around here. There was open trade. And what they're reasserting is that old sort of historical mean. And if you zoom, I guess, in a little bit, it kind of makes sense why America needs to attack or why it does attack. These are plans that have been decades in the making. After 9/11, Wesley Clark talked about how he went into the Pentagon and there was a memo that said, we're going to take out these countries, ending with Iran. So Somalia, Sudan, Syria, Iraq, Libya. And as you can see, they went through that list. And what's happening now is I don't think America's had original policy ideas since really the 90s, but you could say definitely since like early 2000. They're going on like last century's military equipment and last century's strategic thinking. And Trump is not like a strategic thinker who comes in to change the direction of anything. He's just executing old plans. People say, oh, Trump's crazy. Well, what he's doing is just, I think they know they only have a few more years on the stage, and they got to just do everything on their bucket list before they kick the bucket. And then people ask, like, why would America ask now? Well, it's like asking why a serial killer killed the last victim, right? They got away with it before, so they're going to, like, everybody does. It's like, why did Epstein like rape the last person, the one that got him busted? Well, he got away with it before. So they've gotten away with Libya, they've gotten away with Iraq, they've gotten away with Syria, so they're going to try Iran. And then there's no capacity. People think Trump is maybe setting a direction. I just think he has no capacity to change the direction. He can only follow America's strategic policy laid out for decades faster. He's an accelerationist, but he's not a thinker per se.
Navi, did you want to chime in? Because did I see your thing? No, but I guess my question is, how sovereign are the Gulf states? How solid are the Gulf monarchies? These are the questions. Like,
we can rank them. Should we rank them?
Well, that's the thing. Like, they're not. They have what does neocolonialism look like right now? When right now you have that guarantor actor, like the force that established gravity, which was the U.S. empire for so long for these Gulf countries, is gone. Like it's gone. Like, their American daddy has left them, and they're stuck there with the country that's massive and enraged and armed to the teeth and more than happy to like pummel them. And so the question is, like, did the UAE pursue its policy of Zionization on let's say, I hate this word, I'm such a liberal, but with the agency of like rational actors? Like, did they sit there in their little foreign policy bubble in their like national security, be like, okay, it's time to do this, are you ready for this? Like, and then they were like, okay, we're gonna get shit for it, but who cares? Like, did that happen, or did a dictate come to them from actors who are the guarantors of their security, and said to them, like, oh, it's time to sign this, and it's
who
time
created
to
them,
like
and who actually created them?
To me,
Brits.
Yeah.
It was a mix of Brits and Americans, but like basically the ruling class of people who not only midwife them into existence, but also have been their security guarantors in the region, and also their lifeline to the world, right? Like, these Gulf actors are nothing without their investments. So like, the question that I had is, so for instance, like, to take that question, like, make an analogy, all those investments that the Gulf were doing, like F1, like WWE, what I found out about golf, they have like a rival to the PGA, Live. What the hell? Like, they've been sports washing.
It's currently failing. It's about to go bankrupt.
Wait, so that's my question. Did they sports wash by choice, or were they told that it's time that you spend your wealth this way, where this is the new subscription package to the wealth, to like the vassal capital wealth formula, and you can have this much, but the rest of it is going to us? Because I think that so much of like what the economy we see in front of us is just like a facade and really behind the scenes, rich people are passing money to each other and laughing. And like the excuse is like, okay, some WWE. Oh, here's a freaking, here's like, I heard they got the Met, this is great. The Met got $250 million donation or $200 million donation from either Saudi's cut or something. Like, did they make that investment choice? Did they make that investment by choice? Do they have somebody in Saudi Arabia who's like, I really like that exhibition this year on Robert Mapplethorpe? Like, I don't think so. Like, I don't think that's happening. Like, I don't see, it's hard to imagine a country those small where the actors are not many, their names are not known, they have no real security other than other bigger actors. So why should they have a say? Like, why do they get to have it? Like, what would it be? So then the question is that the same? Is this the same for all of them? Is it the same for the UAE as it is for the Qataris? Is it the same for the Saudis? Is it the same? Like, did the Saudis decide to wage a disastrous quagmire war in Yemen, or did somebody say to them, hey, you're now subscribing to the Raytheon, like Girl Guides cookies plan, and you have to like buy this many toys, and you have to like launder this much money to Eric Prince, who will hire Congolese and Senegalese, I think it was Congolese fighters to like basically die on mountains to like Yemeni farmers, right? So like this, I just, it's hard for me to figure out where the vassalage ends and where the agency begins, because surely they have some. Like, they have to have some. It can't just be pure CIA is like Ratatouille working like, working there. It can't just be like that. It can't really be that stupid. I mean, maybe it is.
You must have seen the Ratatouille. It was one of the Iranian embassies.
Yeah, I did see that. This AI slop is getting into my veins. I hate it. The Iranians have gone too far with this AI slop. Stop the slop.
Sina, I think your questions are really important, and I think that like these rulers of these countries envision themselves as being part of the international ruling class, when in reality that they're not, because that's what accounts for why they're functioning and acting in different ways. Why Saudi, for example, is taking one side in Sudan, and the UAE is basically arming the rapid support forces to the teeth, right? Why UAE is working to continue to destabilize Libya, try even going so far as West Africa to destabilize that region, right? To try to continue to partition West Asia. Whereas, Saudi doesn't agree with all these things, right? So I think that they, what I think is that they envision themselves as part of this international capitalist class, when in reality, ruling class, when in reality they've learned in these last however many days and weeks that in fact that their entire existence is basically under the tutelage of not only the United States but now the Zionists, particularly for the UAE, right? Yeah. So I think Saudi is one of those fence-sitting states where it's trying to balance not only within the region but also like with respect to China. That speaks to all like the machinations and dealings with China with respect to Yemen over the last few years, right? So I think that Saudi is making its own maneuvers, developing a mutual defense pact with Pakistan, which we think we should take into consideration with respect to the proposed non-aggression pact with Iran, which is another reason why another factor that Iran might consider in that. But I like you don't like the word agency, right? But I do think that they are maneuvering within the space that they're given, and they think that they have more space than they actually do, right?
Yeah, I think we have to think a little bit in terms of the psychology of mafia gangs, right? And you have those. I don't really know them, but I'm sure some of you have seen films like this where you have the mafia boss is kind of street smart, some of them are smart, and then you have these goons who are completely dim, but because they're part of the strongest gang in town, they have delusions of grandeur and of smartness. I mean, for the UAE, it went to the point that some comrades used to call them a sub-imperialist power because of what they were doing on behalf of empire in Sudan, and are still doing up to a point, and in Libya. But actually, those people have absolutely no they're really they're not leaders in the gang. And if you look at Saudi, it's closer to being a country than the UAE, which is not even, it's not even a place. It's a few emirates, and those emirates were really installed by the British Empire, by White Empire in general, to do their bidding. And they have kind of ideas about their station, which is easy to get to if you get lots of money, and you can gild your toilet with even bigger gold plates than Donald Trump himself can. And so I think that's what is going on. And again, I'm the official China glazer, and I'm already doing cultural appropriation by having my name in Hansa. And if we look back, there was this kind of Chinese move to get the Iranians and the Saudis working together. And there's always two sides to the story, right? I thought it was a sea change, and others say, oh no, it's actually a devious plot by the Saudis and by empire to actually lull Iranians into sleep. But Iranians have not, are unlullable into sleep. They've been preparing for this thing for possibly 47 years, at least since Saddam attacked them, egged on by White Empire. And the non-aggression pact is, you're at the point where, like in a mafia gang, where you see that the Don is not long for this world. Everybody's looking around and saying, okay, so who's going to jump ship first, right? And the cost of being the first of the gang to publicly jump ship is very high, because they'll come straight after you. So everybody's kind of going, oh, should I stay? Should I go? And I really think that's what is going on, and I think what we are seeing at the moment also should let rest any illusions that this is a cunning plan of empire. I'm thinking of the Richard Maddosts of this world, who thought this was all the strategic plan all along, and also the Brian Belletish, and that they are now going to restrict oil supply by 25%, and they're going to get this iron grip on the 75 remaining percent, and that's just absolute delusion, especially now that a lot of the oil is going by land. And the role of Pakistan, again, needs to be thought about, that they have this pact with Saudi, which for a while some people thought was against Iran. But if you look at the way Pakistan has been dealing with Iran since the beginning of this conflict, like, it's a sign that they recognize who the new sheriff is in town, and they've, opened their land to transport whatever from Iran to China and whatever from China to Iran. And so those are the material facts on the ground. And it's just, again, I think, portents of the end of the empire.
I think, can I just quickly jump in, Indi? Yeah, and I'll just really quick. I think Iran understands this very well, understands the different interests of the different entities very well in the region, and is playing on those differences, right? They know that UAE has a different reality than Saudi, as you all have pointed out, and they're treating the two countries in a different way, right? And so they're handling the situation, they're dealing with Pakistan in a different way, right? Like they're in many respects, right? And this sort of security umbrella of like Egypt, Turkey, Saudi, Pakistan, and I forget one other country that was being proposed a few weeks ago, right? Like that is like an alternative security umbrella to the United States, right? I mean, Iran has to be sort of like, giddy about things like that, right? Because all those countries have different interests with each other, for one, right? And so that strengthens Iran's position. And for two, that does not include UAE, that does not include Bahrain, right? I think Qatar was the other country, but all these different interests, even playing out in Syria, all these different interests that are coming into Syria. Again, people wanted to say that Iran was hampered by what happened in Syria, and yes, it was, because Syria was an ally to Iran. But Iran is also taking advantage of the reality of these various interest groups coming into conflict with each other, between, for example, Turkey and the Zionists, right? And so, we need to, like, if we zoom out, as Indi says, like we'll see all these various geopolitical realities and Iran taking advantage of them.
I think I like to return to that, but I had some thoughts based on what you guys said. So just to finish dunking on the UAE, I think UAE is like, it's like a kid who found their daddy's gun and then they like brought it to school and then they shot themselves. You hear them talking, and to zoom out again to, I think Ibn Khaldun talked about it, basically these guys in the Muqaddimah. He talked about, he's talking about Bedouins are more disposed to courage than sedentary people. He said, but then they change. He said the reason for this is that sedentary people have become used to laziness and ease. They are sunk in well-being and luxury. They've entrusted the defense of their property and their lives to the governor and the ruler who rules them, and to the militia which has the task of guarding them. So you can see that clearly in the UAE. They've trusted security to the US and their militia. Even Saudi, I think there's like a lot of Pakistanis. It's not, like their militia per se. They find full assurance in this. They find full assurance of safety in the walls that surround them and the fortifications that protect them. No noise disturbs them, and no hunting occupies their time. They are carefree and trusting and have ceased to carry weapons. Successive generations have grown up in this way of life. They've become like women and children who depend on the master of the house. Eventually, this has come to be a quality of character that replaces natural disposition. So Khaldun talks about kind of like a rule of fours, like 4 generations. He says the first generation does it, the second generation works with them, the third generation knows from like observation, and the fourth generation is mall walking. So I think we're at like the mall. I mean, yeah, MBZ and those guys, they are kind of the fourth generation. I think MBS is the fourth after Saud. I think he's like a great grandchild or a grandchild. So they're nearing. It's weird reading Khaldun because it's like this seems to be dispositional, but they're at the fourth generation. These you see them talking and they're playing dress up, and they're playing dress up in borrowed clothes. And yeah, someone was saying how much agency do they have in this? Adnan, who needs to go to sleep, put up a pretty good ranking. But if you look at, say, Oman, they carry the ceremonial knife. But there's a photo of him of their Ameer recently where he was walking around with a Colt 45. Like these guys are not walking around in the mall, and he was like outdoors, like I guess a Bedouin should be. Whereas these other guys are walking around in the shopping mall. So these things are not the same. These are obviously temporary entities, and you shut the AC off, and the UAE doesn't exist. If Oman would continue, you can tell that Oman would continue to exist. They still know how to live on the land they're in, and like not in an airport. These are just airports, right? These are just airports and like basically brothels and like shopping malls attached to U.S. military bases. But what Navid is saying about how Iran understands the different factions, I think that's very important, because you can see from their mosaic defense, their mosaic embassy defense, that they have different messages for different countries. And within that region, the whole thing that Nasrallah talked about was that Israel was put there to divide and conquer the region, to keep them divided amongst themselves. And what Iran is showing is we can be a region without Israel, but then it's exposing the fractures. So now Oman is splitting off. Saudi, to some degree, is splitting off. This wouldn't have happened before. Qatar, to some degree, is splitting off. Qatar is doing whatever it needs to do to get certain shipments through. So that is splitting off. And then the time here is on Iran's side because the U.S. military bases are no longer there. There is no longer. You could say the security guarantee was fake, and it always was, but it was physically there, right? There was some facts on the ground that said, I have a base. What does that base do? Can that base survive 15 minutes of attacks? I don't know, but it was there. Now those bases are not there. So the US is kind of just floating around, being like playing pirate. But at some point they're going to go home, and then these guys are going to be left with no bases, and then Iran is going to be left in Iran. So it's going to shift.
But I'll tell you what US bases are for. US bases are for enforcing US rule over a country. So once the bases are gone, then, sovereignty, some form of autonomy, agency to join the liberal chorus can actually emerge. And just to get back to Saudi, what put the fear of Allah into the Saudis? Well, it was siblings in Yemen, right? When they attacked Aramco, I forget the year, but that changed everything, right? In one very 2019, thanks, Sina. In one very well-aimed multiple drone attack, they shut down 40% of all oil production in Saudi, and lo and behold, it wasn't very long before Saudi said, well, after all this war, where, we're getting smoked when we try it ourselves, and all the mercenaries we're bringing from Africa are also getting smoked, maybe it wasn't such a brilliant idea after all. So we have to realize that all of these are actually material military victories of the axis of resistance, going way back to, whenever the occupation of West Asia started.
I think there's an interesting question here, which is like the status of something we have to remember in all of this, because in our minds, all of us are I mean, notwithstanding Indi, but in terms of our media consumption, we are like solidly placed in like the Westoid world, and in that world, like up is down, left is right, blue is red, like it's taco is burrito, like it's all anything can go. So like it's not.
But haven't you
so
seen them
when
start
you-
to flip? Like the Washington Post flipped, the New York Times flipped.
So,
They're
but-
reporting
but-
the
and
stuff
there
we
is
talked about
something-
2 months
yeah.
later.
There is definitely something of like then there is a sharks in the water moment, and they are feasting for blood. Like that does kick in, and we're in that moment. But I think a larger sort of question in all this is that the U.S. was trying to protect its name everywhere. The U.S. was trying to project its godlike abilities to smash its enemies, right? That it's this like roving. I compared it to like a Godzilla, and it just arrives on your shores and it stomps you. Like Godzilla, obviously, it doesn't take a PhD in film to notice this was obviously a manifestation of like nuclear annihilation, like for Japanese people, and like Western imperialism arriving at their door in the form of this like overgrown green lizard. And like for them, that's how they experienced it. But I think at a certain point, a country like Iran, and which is so far away, which is like half a world away on the other side of the planet from the US, that the degree of difficulty of doing the Godzilla thing is so high that the Wesley Clark thing that you brought up, Indi, which is the 7 countries in 5 years thing, like they did that, but then this is the final boss. They got to the final boss, and even if their victories up until then were whatever they were in all of those preceded countries, because you can say to a certain point they were victorious. Like they got their way in Libya, they got their way in Iraq, they got their way in Afghanistan, sort of. They got their way in at least initially in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a bit more complicated, but then they definitely got their way in Syria. And now the feeling was, okay, and then the Gaza genocide occurred and the US didn't stop the entity. So people were feeling, and I know this, people were feeling this way, that like, oh, it's just a matter of time. Like it's just the sound of inevitability. Like Godzilla is coming, like Burger Reich Godzilla is coming, and it's going to smash. And all of these like commentators, by the way, I will say it, and I will say his name. Trita Parsi was one of these guys. Trita now has like rebranded a bit as like a resistoid. Actually, I respect Trita more than you'd probably think, given my tankiness. But I think at least Trita is an actor who is like a bellwether for a certain class of people, and the fact that he did keep strong on the Gaza genocide, unlike a lot of his like DC lib reptile class that he kind of is a part of. Like a lot of those cowards like didn't say anything because it was like a democratic thing. So like he is big different, but he was one of those voices. A ton of people were like, well, I guess it's Joe over for Iran. Like, I guess it's done. Like a US is going to show up and it's like going to dick smack us until we're and like this was the sentiment. But what happened? They showed up. It was like the Godzilla. It was not a Godzilla. It didn't work. They just
Yeah, it was like a lizard. It's like that meme where like you think it's Godzilla, but it's like a gecko. And it's like a gecko on a glass of water. It's like
yeah, like it didn't do anything. Like it can't do what it wanted to do, which means it failed. So now we're living in the aftermath of that failure. And that failure wasn't even in, okay, you tried something and you didn't get it, but you tried something and it opened a door to your adversary to now walk through and fundamentally change the nature of the conflict, of the laws of gravity around the conflict. So whereas before Iranians couldn't send a barrel of oil out into the world without doing like James Bond, Looney Tunes, goofy tricks in the middle of the ocean, ship to ship transfers using close knit radio. Don't tell anyone. Oh, the satellite spotted us. Like this kind of ridiculous.
And get paid in UAE
in
banks.
tea. No, we got paid in tea. No, we were doing barter with Iran.
Things.
Like
they got paid in what did they get paid? Some ridiculous thing in Syria. It was like nitrates. It was some ridiculous for oil. They got nitrates for oil. I don't even know what that is. I'm offended by that. Like it's like a ridiculous.
It's what you put in ham.
Yeah, whatever.
Nitrates.
Exactly. It wasn't
yeah, but you can also blow
stuff
up with it. But yeah,
yeah, that's true. But it was like some ridiculous deal. But it was and that was maximum pressure. So the thought that you can do maximum pressure to Iran, even though now the world is getting that maximum pressure campaign, like it's I through all of this, my emotions have been whatever. I mean, that's like the story of my life. But at this point, it's like the feeling of like
it's not you, it's capitalism. It's not you. It's living under imperialism.
But it's like what can they do? Like what is there to what is left to be done for these people that they haven't tried? And then on top of that, the pain inflicted by such a move. Because everything Iran does to them is reversed and then done back to them to the surrounding neighborhood of. So you can't. The contradiction we have right now is pretty fundamental capitalism. You either get your extractivist economy, you either get your hydrocarbons and the things that you need to run modern societies, or you get your Zionism. Which one is it? Like, which one do you love more? Like,
yeah, but that's implying that there's any sort of choice.
You can't get your extractivism anymore because, as brilliantly said by Ali Kadri in the closing speech of the Lahore anti-imperialist conference, which I invite every sibling and comrade with 7 hours to spare to watch, but you can go straight to Ali's speech at the end. An extractivist economy requires weakening the people from the lands from which you extract, and that sanction business has run its course. It hasn't, not only has it now weakened the people under sanctions, it's actually given them their autonomy back. It's given them their self-sufficiency back. It's given them their strength back. So that avenue is not possible anywhere. And by the way, the dog that hasn't barked yet is the empire's pit Godzilla bull, being the Zionist entity, and you were talking about the sound of I don't know what part of Godzilla's anatomy flapping the Japanese. But speaking of sound, you remember when they did the pager attacks, and then they were making all these depraved, disgusting jokes about beep 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 beep, and then offering Trump this golden pager on an olive tree trunk that must have been at least 600 years old or something like this, even preceding any crazy idea of Zionism. And now what is the noise? We're here in southern Lebanon and northern occupied Palestine. It's whiz, right? And that noise is actually putting the fear of God onto the Zionist occupiers. They don't have American bases to protect them anymore. They have nothing left. They only have the, getting the UAE to try and buck the US into more aggression. But now they are seeing those, and, I don't watch them too much because war has become this disgusting snuff movie, right? Like with those FPV drones, it's just become an endless supply of snuff movies. We had this first with Ukraine and Russia, and now we're seeing the same from South Lebanon, where you see those, Zionists in their last stupid, surprised facial expression before they get smoked. But that we have to understand the psychological effect of that on those, Übermensch, Nietzschean, my will creates reality. I can do anything I will unto you, and then I'll dress in the underwear of your women and film myself on TikTok riding the bicycles of your children. When they see those images, they can identify who it was. That is going to be one of the final straws that's going to break the back of settler, squatter minds. Can you break the back of a mind? Anyway, you know what I'm saying.
I imported some of those videos if you guys are into some stuff.
Yeah, should we show them?
Yeah,
Do you want to see
put
them,
like
or-
Just
put-
when
put
I
the
said,
latest-
just
put the
when I
latest
was
one.
trying to rise above and
There
say
was
we shouldn't watch snuff videos.
Well, they're
So
not
I-
snuff videos.
I put
It's
this.
like,
This
it's
is
something else.
So this
This
is
is a fascinating one. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. This is the latest one that came out yesterday. So this is interesting for another reason, because look, this is a second flyby. So this is
Yeah,
a multiple
flyby
drone
shows-
swarm.
yeah.
So what's happening here? We've seen similar strikes with cornets or whatever, but here you get the video immediately from
Yeah.
the place, so it has that propaganda effect. And sometimes these drones, you see them just like in this case, he's looking around and he's choosing what to hit. He passes the tank, he passes the jeep, and he goes straight for whatever this is. So this is just different. With the cornets and other stuff, they have to have like one surveillance team, I would assume, one shooting team, and then almost another, and then probably another propaganda team. In this case, it's like one guy. He goes around, they certainly have some intelligence, but they find what they want to hit. And then again, you can see that they follow up. So sometimes you look at these things and you're like, well, some of the old videos, you're like, something happened. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it worked. This is like, that's gone. And the way they hit it, that's not the charge like that's in the drone. They must have hit some ammunition or something, or fuel. Where are we now?
Yeah,
It's interesting that the nature. Because sorry, Navi, you go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, remember, I don't know if you all remember, like, I was on your show, Indi and Benji, like I don't know how long ago it was now. The Iraqi resistance was doing something similar, like over a month ago, right? And and we talked about how like there were drones filming other drones carrying out operations on U.S. bases in Iraq, right? And now the Lebanese resistance is doing this, where you have like in this clip, I think it's like a 3-minute clip, Indi, if I remember correctly, because I saw it today as well.
Yeah,
you have like 4 different drones going around filming each other, like showing the damage of the other drones have done, and then going on to carry out their whatever operation that they're going to do as well, right? So it's the resistance is evolving in its capacity and its capabilities, both on the battlefield and psychologically, and those two things are coming together in these videos. Yes. And I think it's very important to point out.
Yeah, and filming the aftermath of the strikes is, classic and super effective psychological warfare, right? Because these images are there to show the squatters, look what it looks like afterwards.
I mean, it's also like this is what Israelis themselves do. Sorry, Indi, but like this is part of the game that they release. So like, but during
the Israeli stuff is like
exactly,
Israeli stuff is like I killed a guy on a motorbike and then I followed his like 12-year-old girl into a field and killed her too, and then they'll or like I blew someone's fingers off in like a supermarket. Yeah. That's so there's this organization called the Union Center, which is sanctioned by the U.S., which is a recommendation. It's an Iranian-based think tank, and I auto-translated some of its reports on these drone things. So they divided the type of stuff they're doing into. There's one kind of like a vertical dive attack. So I liken them to chess moves, like a chess piece. It moves, like L and that. So it's able to get under the cope cage. They're expanding the cope cages now, but it's able to get under and hit the trophy system. They're also doing double strikes, which is they're using it with cornets. So they'll do one strike to trigger the trophy and then one strike to finish it. And then they're doing what they call incendiary bombardment, which is drone swarms, like we just saw, and you saw how much it like just lit up that one area. They're also using it to support ambushes. So they're still doing their regular cornet ground type ambushes, but they have air cover now. And they're using it for urban warfare, which I think we have an example of that. You can show the John Elmer one. Is that urban war? No, I mean, that's not exactly one, but this is a good one anyway. So this one, you can see like they're doing what they did in Gaza, where they're just parking their tanks in a circle in like an open area. But with the Gaza resistance,
They're
they would
just
have to
doing the
physically.
Ouija board thing.
Yeah. So you can see they're parked in a circle. So I've seen this in Gaza, right? Except, but in that case, a man, has to pop out of a tunnel, run, and put the munition by hand on the back of the tank. And it's just incredibly brave, but also you lose those men. Like everyone, all those videos, now I'm learning their names, sadly, because they've been killed. But I've seen someone do that by hand, but now they don't have to do that by hand. They're able to put the charge on the door by air. And you can see these guys, I don't even know what they're doing, right? They're just parking and like having a cigarette. But these guys aren't covered, because you can, even this sort of thing, you can cover with a shotgun if you're brave. Like someone could be up in the balcony and cover it, but they never cover their flanks.
And you know, Indi, like,
Go ahead.
I will say that there have been Zionist reports. I think that the Zionists are scared shitless that if Hamas and the Palestinian resistance start to engage in this kind of warfare as well, get these kinds of capabilities. Because what I want to say is that this particular development with respect to Hezbollah is one of the most important developments in the 3 years of war almost 3 years of war that we've seen now. We can talk about Hormuz, the attacks against U.S. bases. We can talk about, like, of course, the tunnels and all that in Gaza. All of these things are super significant. The blockade of the Zionist entity in the Red Sea. All these things are super important. I think what's going on tactically with respect to Hezbollah and the first-person view drones is up there as well. And the reason why I say this is because I actually want to put this in historical context and go to another region, to Southern Africa. In the Zimbabwean liberation struggle, like in the late 60s and early 70s, the Zimbabwean resistance organizations, they underwent a reassessment period where they had gone from fighting conventional war and it wasn't working against the Rhodesian security forces. And so they had for 4 years, they underwent a reassessment period, and they came back and they started fighting a guerrilla war. And when they did that, they started using mining tactics. They would mine roads that Rhodesian security forces would use to patrol the areas in villages in northeastern Zimbabwe, right? And the resistance would mine those roads, and security forces would be blown up, right? And they waged these attacks, in fact, through cross-border operations from bordering Mozambique, because the Mozambican resistance was fighting against the Portuguese, and they were liberating land from the Portuguese colonizers, in the same way, through mining tactics, right? And so it got to the point where the Rhodesians and the Portuguese became so nervous and scared that they did not want to leave their installations, their barracks, to go on patrols. They essentially became a garrison army, right? And now what we're seeing here in southern Lebanon and also northern occupied Palestine is that Zionist forces are evacuating, including in northern occupied Palestine, evacuating some of their bases, right? They're so afraid to go out, and they frankly they should be, as you point out, Indi. What are these vehicles just doing out there, right? They're just going to get blown up, right? And so this signals to me a qualitative shift, right? And I don't want to get into the realm of predicting and things like this, but these are the kinds of things that can lead to a land invasion of northern occupied Palestine, right? That is the significance of what's going on right now, right? I'm not going to. I don't want to say that's going to happen definitively, but the conditions are being laid for a ground invasion of northern occupied Palestine, because
But that is the plan. That's what the Ramadan force is there for.
And with a non-aggression pact by the Saudis, maybe they'll let those 2 million Yemenis just walk through.
I guess.
Oh, this is northern. This is the northern Palestine. Yeah. But you're right. Maybe from the south. Yeah.
Well, there's if there's a party, people will want to come.
I guess the question is, like, it's more that it's pretty clear now that the way imperialists do war is just is expired.
Yeah.
That model of of just massive power and hardware and brute force and big expensive aircraft carriers.
It's a 20th century model. It's a 20th century model. So I've been writing about how the paradigm has shifted. It's gone from a jet sort of aircraft carrier model to a tunnel and missile drone war. Like there's a joke going around that explaining to people in the future, like, how would you explain a fighter jet to someone in the future? You'd be like, well, there's a drone, but you put a person in it. And then the kids will be like, "Why would you do that?" It's like riding like a horse into World War II. You know, that's kind of what they're doing. Like they have very impressive cavalry, but it's not a cavalry war.
And like the
Fighting the
idea of
last
like
war.
there's something beautiful in how in this kind of warfare. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, it's again, I will say this, the stuff. I think Benji, what you brought up earlier, and I think there's an important distinction to make. I think some of the videos out of Ukraine for
The Ukraine stuff is
especially
so
how
depressing. It's so depressing.
yeah, I mean the aestheticization of human death is, and the memification of that aestheticization, does that work?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
so, is something that we all have to reckon with. I mean, I think we've had memes of death for a long time. I mean, for God's sakes, Americans in the early 20th century are sending postcards of lynching to each other. So this is not sadism and textuality.
But that's what you took the kids to on like a Saturday. It was like a lynching.
Yeah, like it's not
Exactly.
imperial. I don't think, but I don't see. I mean, I don't know. I'm not that deep in the Russian military like world. I don't see the sadism of that you do see on the part of, say, Zionists. Zionists are uniquely sadistic in their pleasure that they take. In Ukraine, you watch terrible videos and have been watching terrible videos, and the FPV drones, like you see the actual terrible like results of like a robot, a flying bird, like it's actually dystopian, like a flying digital bird arriving to a human being made out of flesh and blood, exploding in front of them, and like a very localized, intimate, and on top of that, it's live streamed to your enemy who's recording it for future posterity so they can find it. Like they can find it as like, oh, who got roasted on in May 2nd, 2026? Okay, this guy in this town. Like that's like this is a horrible trajectory of human history. However, and I want to like Steph. However, when you compare that to dropping 500, like whatever, however many kiloton bombs on crowded refugee camps, which is how imperialists operate, not just Zionists. Americans do it too. Americans, like, look what they did to Raqqa. Like, go and look at Raqqa. Like, that's not like go look at Fallujah.
Fallujah,
This is not. Yeah, like this is not unique to the American warfare. And prior to these modern Middle East wars, you're talking about like other scorched earth campaigns. Like look what they did to you. Like,
and the French killed
France,
1.6 million in Algeria.
The French did gas chambers just with wood and smoke. Like they've done the same stuff. The technology changes.
But then now, though, is that now it's not simply the guy with the biggest bombs wins. I mean, it was never really that case, but imperialists stretched that logic to their benefit for such a long time that they were able to murder their way through populations into getting them to submit, with notable exceptions. Vietnam, right? Like, but we've reached a point in the and other countries. Vietnam was just the one that came to mind first, but like essentially we've reached the point now where the technologies of a recent guest of mine put it in terms of creative destruction. I think that's like a term imperialists use, actually, come to think of it. But it is like this kind of creative destruction that Iranians participated in, which was hit them in their painful spot, hit them in their most sensitive technical spot. Like it's not, and now you do it with a very small, cheap, easily replicable weapon. So you don't get into a situation where your economy, like you do in the West, where your economy is now built on a foundation of a limitless war. Because then underneath that foundation, you need to have human skulls, like at the beginning of Terminator 2, just like crushing on them all the time. Whereas Iranians do warfare like they do it justly. They do it locally. They attack the actors who are responsible for the wars inflicted upon them. So it's
and Russia fights relatively the same way. Yeah,
when I was saying snuff films, I wasn't kind of scolding the resistance or anything. What I was saying, I was talking about the psychological effect of it, right? And now the settlers can see it. They can see the faces. They can see death coming at them in this way. That's completely breaking their self-image, right? And I don't have the Fanon shirt today because it's dirty. I had it yesterday, right? I had to put it in the wash. But the first chapter of Wretched of the Earth is about violence and the necessity of violence to free yourself from the grip of colonialism, not because violence is great or is cleansing or anything like this, but because colonialism is about violent extraction, violent primitive accumulation, and the only way you can get rid of it is through violence. And through this violence, you regain equality with your colonizer. So, this is what we are seeing through these FPV drone videos. But I was pointing to the fact that you now have snuff videos, as I call them, of the Chosenites has got to have an impact on them. And in a funny sort of a way, in a comic sort of a way, it comes exactly at the time when they're getting their depraved law for execution of Palestinian prisoners through their pretend parliament, right? And there's a very strong anti-colonial poetic justice to this particular fact, right? What will they do to top this? Televise the hangings or something?
Let me give you some quotes on the psychological effect of this stuff. This is from the Union Center, which is that Iranian think tank. They're reporting on Israeli media. They're saying the size of the incendiary bombs surprised us. This is some Israeli commander. He told the Makor Rishon, I knew that Hezbollah had the capability, testified the commander of Battalion 9. We are using incendiary devices, but the scale surprised us. This is happening on a very large scale. He confirmed that his factions were forced to go into hiding. He added that his infantry units were forced to remain sheltered in the basements due to being subjected every few hours to attacks by improvised explosive devices. The military establishment explicitly admitted to Channel 14 in Haaretz that there is no comprehensive and ideal solution to Hezbollah's affiliates at the present time. The nightmare returns and soldiers' morale collapses. And then this is the Union Center saying the incendiary devices caused a state of hysterical terror. Paranoia, often seen, and then they're saying these things are not seen except for the final fractions of a second. The commander of the Nahal Brigade made a confession regarding the depth of his soldiers' psychological predicament, as reported in the newspaper Yediot, saying, we didn't dare raise our heads in our area of operations in southern Lebanon because of the drones. They possess more and lethal weapons than ours. And then there's just one more thing, which is from the conclusion of this Union Center report, which it's like pretty detailed, and they list, I think, 73 incidents in a space of a month. But at the end, they sort of like, I guess Iranians can't resist poetry. So they break into poetry, in my opinion. So they say, during the Israeli-style ceasefire attempts, the interceptor aircraft worked to prevent the enemy from consolidating its control on the ground or imposing a new reality through freedom of movement on the ground, proving that the final word on the modern front is no longer written only by the roar of warplanes, F-35s, those that hover in instead, those that hover in the upper atmosphere with a buzzing sound, they can carry out operations to impose control, to swoop down silently, unseen and unheard, yet they strike a fatal blow, reducing what the enemy calls a war of survival for his soldiers hiding in the sacred soil of the South. So they're killing them with poetry. But like so with drones, it's not just it's a small munition. What they're saying, I think the average would be about 7 kilograms. Hezbollah is saying they have stuff that can carry up to 35. Israel is saying it's more like 3 to 6 kilograms. So it's not necessarily the payload. I think a Cornet is stronger, but it's the sort of just fear factor. You can see from the Ukraine stuff that it's made just assembling more than 3 men and a motorbike anywhere impossible. You cannot concentrate. It's like an Ender's Game where he had that bomb that could just blow up any larger concentration. It makes mass formations impossible. And since this is a kind of like a reservist army, they depend on mass armor formations. And what Hezbollah has said is that they're targeting Hummers and Jeeps, which are how they move sort of commanders and communication lines back and forth. And they're strategically targeting that. So the commanders know they're not safe. You're not safe going from point to point. The way it's been set up is they could push into southern Lebanon and they could occupy a house and wear your wife's underwear and function effectively like that. They can't do that anymore. There's videos of them going into windows. And they set up infrastructure, but then again, the drones just go in the garage door. There's one guy like running into a porta potty, but that doesn't save him. it makes them like they're used to colonizing safely. They're used to colonizing from a distance. And
exactly.
occasionally they will get lit up in an ambush, but they know in that ambush, they'll still probably kill more of Hezbollah. Now they're not
And
even
then they'll
seeing
bomb
Hezbollah.
Beirut as punishment. They'll bomb
Yes.
something
Yeah.
civilian as punishment. They'll terrorize. Yeah, that's their game. I mean, the part of the story behind these so-called negotiations is that Iranians insisted that you keep the war in the war zone in the south, and like you fight that war. And I will say that like I have like my own drone. I play with it all the time. And it's like this is a toy. This is a toy.
Mhm.
It's nothing special. It does not have any special parts. I mean, it's an okay one. It's like a DJI, but like you can move it so fast. It's so easy to move, especially if you turn off the like object sensing. It does not pause. It does not wait for you to like slow down. It just zooms anywhere it wants. And the fact that I have a question though, maybe somebody in the chat will know, but it's interesting to know that these are fiber optics, which means that they can't really go down and like through anything, because presumably like they could get caught. So they have to like go really high until they reach a town and then drop and find something. But it's in the other story here, and something that I never really considered until recently, which was Lebanon. South Lebanon is the very opposite geographically than Gaza. You're talking about small villages that are isolated from each other, disparately connected across like a fairly, I mean, gentle but mountainous or like hilly terrain. And what are you gonna? You can't. You've bombed all of them. You've bombed your way. You have to actually do the thing. And this is what I was going on earlier: is that the degree of difficulty for the U.S. in Iran is it like in terms of achieving what it wants to achieve, that it's like half a world away who has to achieve this kind of military power, especially the nature of how Iran is built, its geography. But in the same way, like Israelis can't even go into the south of Lebanon. They can't even keep the calm and serenity of their northern colonies. And so when people look at the situation in South Lebanon versus northern Palestine, they say, well, one side is getting bounded to smithereens and the other side isn't. Like, I mean, they are. The other side was. But it's more that all you have to do with the Zionists is ruin their colonization project.
Yes.
You have to spoil the fun of expanding your land. And there's a video that they released, that Hezbollah released, where they went after a tent. Like a tent of dudes. Like they looked around for places. They saw like some carrier, they saw a Merkava, and then they realized there was a tent there. And they probably were like, okay, there's probably dudes in there. And if the Israelis can't set up a tent in South Lebanon without getting hunted by like a flying, like robot, like mortar, then like what future is there for them? How can they, like, they can't, the Dahia doctrine can't fix that. Secret duper, super duper surveillance and pager attack terrorism can't fix that. You have to actually win. You can't win if your dudes can't even set up a tent without getting, blown to smithereens. Go ahead, Navid.
No, yeah, exactly. Sina, like, and again, this brings me, like, this is why I brought up the Zimbabwe example, because after the 2024 war, Hezbollah basically reoriented its war strategy away from conventional warfare. It had undergone a period of guerrilla warfare, had gone more toward conventional operations particularly during the Syria war. But after the 2024 war, it had to reassess its own strategic methods of waging war, right? And it came back in 2026 as basically, again, renewed guerrilla warfare, right? And so the terrain, as you point out, Sina, is advantageous for this kind of war, for Hezbollah to wage this kind of war, especially now that they don't even have to put their own troops in harm's way to the extent that they had to before, right? So if we think about this from the perspective of the Zionists, right? Like, if the way to fight against a guerrilla war is a counterinsurgency, you drain, the famous maxim of counterinsurgency theory is to drain the sea, right? To drain the sea. If the guerrillas are like fish swimming in the sea, which is what Mao says, your task as a counterinsurgency campaign is to drain the sea and to expose the guerrillas. But what happens if you can't even send your soldiers out because you're afraid that they're going to get hit by a drone? Like, you cannot wage a counterinsurgency in this kind of way, because you can't expose anybody, because you're afraid of exposing yourselves to the guerrillas and to the drones that they're using, right? This is why I'm saying that they're essentially becoming a garrison army, afraid to leave their own installations. And this is a major strategic development in the war. We cannot understate it.
Yeah. And they can bomb civilians, they can kill civilians, but they can't get at the resistance. I mean, you know, people are in tunnels, so they can't take the land anymore.
And sorry, Benji, to interrupt you.
No, go.
And if they do, like now, Iran, as Sina pointed out, Iran has a ceasefire with the United States, saying that, you know, you can't hit Beirut. I mean, they weren't even supposed to hit southern Lebanon, but nonetheless, right? You can't hit Beirut. And so now the threat is, if the Zionists hit Beirut, Iran's going to respond. And so there's no good options for them, right? There's no good options.
Well, there is one. They can leave. That's a good option.
But you can see how it's coming together, because like Navid is saying, like normally the response to anything, you light up one soldier in South Lebanon, we take out an apartment building in Beirut. That equation can't hold if this ceasefire is existing in whatever form it does, because Iran is able to impose similar costs on Israel now. So you can see that they're dividing it. They're dividing Israel from its Iron Dome, which was really the Gulf states. They've cut off that sort of radar spider web, and now they're limiting its ability to attack, essentially to divide Lebanon, like to attack essentially urban Lebanon, and for anything that happens in the south. So yeah, it's very interesting strategically and tactically. But yeah, I agree with Navid that this is a real paradigm changer. And it's not just because drones itself are magical technology. You can see that Hezbollah is using them as part of a combined arms strategy. They're using it with their existing cornets. They're using it with existing ambush. They have the Radwan force. They have ground forces. They're using it with excellent intelligence. So it's a force multiplier, but even more than that, it's a fear multiplier. You can see, just even if the Israeli troops are scared already. They call the Hezbollah forces ghosts. They don't see them hitting them, but they at least know that there's a person out there. Now, like, they don't see them at all. They just hear a buzz, and then they're gone, and then they hear another buzz, and you know, this is it's a conscript army. These guys are like baristas or like software engineers. They're not built for this, and then Hezbollah is built for this.
Yeah. And do you think the chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz is also reducing the supply of what you need to produce diapers, adult diapers? That would be another. So like
Israel will adapt to this, right? You can see that both Ukraine and Russia adapted, but all the adaptations are very kind of labor intensive. In Ukraine, you have to set up the cope cages on tanks, yes, and then they set up these sort of for any supply route. They put up netting, basically, to cover the entire supply route. So you have to build, so okay, fine, but you guys have to like go out in Lebanon and set up netting, like in Hezbollah's backyard. Okay, this is different. It's not like in Ukraine. And you can shoot down a drone with a shotgun. They're trying to come up with these like magical solutions that essentially aim the gun. There's some technology like Trophy, I guess, that you attach it to your gun and it like helps your idiot like conscript shoot anything. But that's what you need is some guy who's good at shooting with a shotgun, and he's like willing to take some hits, and that's what they don't have.
Hard. I've watched a few videos. Of army guys trying to shoot drones. It's super hard because it's not like shooting clay pigeons, right? They change direction all the time. They accelerate at incredible rates. And and I think the other thing we have to see also is like it's almost like the Zionists are redirecting their targeting towards Nicholas Kristof in the New York Times, right? But I think they're in a terrible situation, and I don't make predictions, but Sheikh Yassin made the prediction for everybody, and he said the entity would probably not last beyond 2027, and he also based his prediction based on this kind of 40-year, generational Hibral-Dun-ish
he said it's a Quranic prediction. Yeah. He said it's a Quranic prediction. Yeah.
And Indi, like to your point, right? Like this is one of the most mechanized militaries in the world, being reduced to like nets and roofs of like places that they've destroyed, right? Like it's just, like Nasrallah says they're weaker than a spider's web. They're almost to the point of using spider webs for protection.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, it's so again, this kind of low intensity warfare is advantageous to a guerrilla movement, right? And to an organization that is used to fighting these kinds of wars. And so this ceasefire, if again we want to call it that, right, is advantageous to the resistance because they can continue to go like this. Hezbollah can continue to engage in 20 to 25 operations per day during a ceasefire, and continue to inflict hits on the Zionist, on the enemy, right? And the enemy can only respond by with these nets and stuff, right? With like the most low technology to defend themselves. That ultimately, therefore, and then it goes to Indy what you say about like air force multiplier and fear multiplier, right? So now they're using Hezbollah is using these drones to hit, for example, Iron Dome batteries that they're trying to move to southern Lebanon, right? And so they're hitting Iron Dome batteries, and so that therefore makes
you can show that, Sina. We got that one loaded. So
okay, yeah. So you go ahead.
Which one was that? OSINT monitor?
Yeah, OSINT. Sorry, Navid, go ahead.
No, yeah, that's all I was going to say. You see that they hit this Iron Dome battery, and I think there's another clip right after this where they hit the people who are coming to remove the Iron Dome battery right after that, right? So this, once they hit these batteries, this gives more power to their missiles to reach their destinations as well, right? So like these different forms of these different operations and these different weapons are complementing each other in their operations.
And you look at how that Iron Dome is built, right? Like it's protected on like one side or whatever, but otherwise it's not shielded. So you have explosives there which are not shielded. Their technology isn't built for this. Nobody's built for placing a small. It's built for maybe taking a large charge straight on or something, so they protect one side of it, and it's built for being hidden and for basically not being able to be touched. Like the transport vehicles they use are not terribly armored. The bulldozers, the D9s or the Caterpillar, they're armored on the front, but then they're kind of like open on the side. Like nothing is built for some munition that can maneuver and like come in a window. So
my God, boys with toys. Shout out to Shitty Matcha and guys who hasn't donated yet. Like we're gonna get, we're gonna get a right.
We're doing download. It's download, right?
Brother Adnan. So
there's also I want to ask people to donate to my friend Ameer. He's the brother of Muhammad. He was diagnosed with celiac. So imagine being diagnosed with celiac during a Holocaust.
I think,
is it the guy
video?
He
was struggling to get something wheat free.
The first cake today.
The cake. So I've seen what celiac disease can do. It's brutal. You have one flake.
My sister has it actually.
Yeah, you're sick for 3 weeks. There's consequences down the line. Like it's the worst, and there's like cascading symptoms. It's a terrible disease. So please help him out. Give him something. I appreciate that. Thank you, everyone.
No, and we should definitely donate to that because I still see stuff from the West where people are talking about like, oh, their particular like food allergies and stuff. I'm like, bro, like you're like, think of how some people are living. Like my daughter just went on her first school trip alone yesterday, and just like the amount of stuff to like get these like fancy kids. Like you could put their medicine in one bag, and she's like packing so much. And I'm like, well, people are like leaving their houses in the middle of the night. With how do you feed your kids in this situation? And like these are our kids.
And can I say something about celiac? Celiac is actually caused by starvation. Like there was in Holland during the Second World War. At one point, there was people who were starving. There was a lot of hunger, and the generation that was born after that had many, many cases of celiac disease. So those diseases aren't just an accident. They're also a function of the siege, of the occupation, and of the rationing of Gaza for, what was it, 17 years by the genocidal white empire and its Zionist. What did I call it?
And that is the intent. You have to understand that. So there's something called the General's Plan, which is published, and they talk about it openly on Israeli TV. And the plan is, in any war, it's usually kind of like 50-50, whatever, war, and then deprivation, hunger, disease. And so what they say in this General's Plan is that anyone that we don't do this for the sake of cruelty, but anyone who dies through disease and starvation is someone that we don't lose a soldier, trying to eliminate. So they are trying to kill people
to jack
now.
up the ratio, right? To jack up the ratio civilian.
So we talk about the ceasefire is definitely on militarily on the resistance's side, but there is that ticking clock in that Gaza is a concentration camp which they are liquidating as we speak. But it's a crazy sort of concentration camp where you can do something about it. You can tell your kids that you did something, and it's not that hard. I'm filling out the form now for Ameer, so you guys should be filling it out too.
And it's also
going on these podcasts actually costs me money.
It's also a camp where I saw this week that the armed resistance is recruiting even more new recruits, and it's got enough explosives to engineer new weapons in its tunnels. So that's also something to keep in mind, because surprises might happen. And the best way to help, again, material the resistance is really by helping the water. You mentioned Navid. The gorilla is like a fish in the water of the people. And so the best way you can support resistance is by putting some nutrients into the water, and we can send back some of that money that the imperialists we haven't been able to stop here are extracting from our siblings in Gaza by sending to all these fundraisers.
I actually want to revisit this 7 wars, Wesley Clark, all that stuff that we talked about earlier, because I actually want to think about what were the U.S.'s actual achievements during these wars / regime change operations / whatever you want to call them, right? Because I agree, at least temporarily, the United States did achieve certain objectives, like in Iraq and Afghanistan. What was it, 2004 that Bush was on the aircraft carrier with the mission accomplished sign behind him? Was it still 2003? I don't remember.
It was like 2000. Yeah, it was probably 2003. Yeah, a few months, like 3 months after the first assault was made.
Right. So point being that the U.S. was in Iraq for. It's kind of still isn't. It still is in Iraq, right? And it's
May 1st, 2003. Damn, it was May
1st. Okay, so that's within 2 months, right? In Afghanistan, okay, yeah, they, I don't know, I guess they achieved some kind of military objective. What's the situation in Afghanistan now? The U.S. has been pushed out to such a point where Trump is demanding the reestablishment of a military of the U.S.'s old military base in Afghanistan, and Afghanistan is saying no, we're not going to do that. Afghanistan is forging ties with China, with Russia, with India, and increasingly so with Iran as well, right? Iraq, the U.S. is being pushed out of Iraq, as we speak. Syria, even in Syria, again, we can say it's a strategic victory for the United States, but we're seeing new resistance organizations pop up in Syria on a regular basis, right? So point being,
did it help them also? Did it help them in the Iran war overthrowing Syria? They couldn't do shit. They couldn't even get their planes in Syria.
And they're pulling out their bases and the Russian bases coming back.
Yeah.
So
After 15 years and $2 trillion, they can get McDonald's and Visa back in Damascus. Wow. Congratulations, Uncle Sam. Operation Timber Sycamore is success.
Yeah, exactly. So what strategically was achieved, right? And so on the one hand, there's that question. On the other hand, what were the costs for the United States in Iraq? What were the costs for the United States in Afghanistan? Because at the same time that Iran was actually growing stronger during these wars, forging ties with local resistance groups in Iraq and now Syria, of course, growing stronger with the resistance in Lebanon, right? And Palestine. Right. At the same time this is happening, the U.S. was being worn down in Afghanistan, being worn down in Iraq to such an extent that the U.S. public is now adamantly against any kind of war in the region because they don't want to be bogged down once again. Right. And so all of this to say is the contradictions that arose from Iraq and Afghanistan and even Syria are playing out with respect to Iran, and Iran is taking advantage of this fully. Right. And so we can, whatever Wesley Clark says, right? And whatever the imperialists tried to do, they created all kinds of contradictions for themselves in all these places, and it's bearing out.
So the important thing about that plan is it was 7 countries in 5 years. So if they manage to do that, that's a great plan. But 7 countries or 6 countries in 25 years and leaving Iran to the end, very different situation.
But I think
and
another
leaving Iran
thing
to the end also had consequences that then nullified the victories that they had preceded, right? Because that was that in doing what they tried to do and not pulling it off, it failed so miserably that it set them back in their wider goal of, and this is what I was saying earlier, it's that their task for them is so difficult. Like this is Pinky and the Brain, like scale,
Yeah, exactly.
like demand.
What do we do tonight?
Okay?
Try to take over the world, yeah.
They need the whole thing. They can have 0 rivals in the American system. In like the Western European, there can only be one winner. Like imagine, I've been reading about the the so-called French Indian Wars, basically in the 7 Years' War in Europe, and how like imagine if they had just sat down and be like, what if we don't fight? What if we just share? And they couldn't do that. They couldn't allow that. I mean, it's complicated because there is fundamentally different kinds of genocidal settler colonialism, French, Spanish, like there's different sort of arrangements of it. There's each of the states are in their own. So it's not just like some Power Rangers thing where they can come together in some unique Megazord, whatever. It can't just work. But in fighting with each other, they created this new equation. This is the argument of, I really recommend this book, The Rediscovery of America by Ned Blackhawk. And one of the arguments he makes is that like in winning, like the Brits won North America and they won like the 7 Years' War, right? Like they won that. But the consequences of that winning resulted in losing the colonial holdings that they were fighting over to begin with. So it's like a situation where, like you cut off your nose to spite your face or whatever. Like cut off your nose to spite your face. It's a Pyrrhic victory. Yeah. And I can't help but think that like here the analogy, at least in some ways, is that the demand to destroy Gaza, to ethnically cleanse Gaza, the genocidal bloodlust on the part of Zionists and their allies, and the ways that how they yanked every institutional lever they could to keep any kind of resistance down, any kind of like they had to pull so many and expel so much of their own social capital, institutional capital in doing so, exposing the nature of our society. So all those universities will never live down, like in my head, like UCLA will never live down like what they did to their students. It will always be known that they let a bunch of freaking psychotic fascioid IDF goons hunt their teenager students down who were camping on a lawn. Like that will be Kent State moment, even if they don't have the media reminding them and they try to memory hole it, but like that will be there forever. And so that's just one example of how like the cost of the Gaza genocide has been that, and then this scaling up and the scaling up on the part of imperialists, the escalation, because they didn't get the victory they needed in Gaza. So they were like, okay, let's get the victory in Lebanon that we didn't get in Gaza. Oh shit, we didn't get that. Let's get it in Syria. Okay, Syria was like halfway done and it was like a group project, fine. But what does it get? Like the whole point of Syria was that you had another vector to attack Hezbollah. Iran, and it turns out during the war, and this was kind of, it wasn't really mentioned a ton, but Iraqi factions, the Iraqi Hashd al-Shaabi, which, remember, is a part of the Iraqi state military, right? It's not a militia, it's not a proxy, it's a part of the Iraqi state military. They said any move on the part of Syrian Takfiri, like, basically mercenaries, into Syria would result in Lebanon would result in a direct land invasion from another country, aka Iraq. Okay, so like they got to the point where countries were saying to other countries, if you do this, you will cost everything. This will, like, we got really close to direct regional war. I mean, we've been in a regional war for a long time. It's just been undeclared. right? Like it's an undeclared. Syria is a World War III like mini version of it. It just was undeclared. It was dressed up as it was dressed up as a civil war, and we all fell for it, or like not all.
It's only called a world war
Yeah.
if it involves white people. That's the rule.
Yeah, exactly. But like, but that's the thing. They kept looking for that. They kept looking to weigh out, a flex, a victory, and they finally did the crazy thing, which they never even should have thought of, which is attack Iran. And now, in doing that, all of the house of cards that they had built of their strategic victories just came tumbling down, and now they have a bigger mess on their hands. Not only has Iran survived what was a brutal period of maximum pressure that lasted over a decade. I mean, it lasted from Trump 1 to now, and this is a culmination of that. And it changed. It sort of had phase changes throughout that time, but it had a democratic phase. But all of this time has been met with immense force on Iran to cave to the demands of the imperialists, and it didn't work. So the last thing they had was a war. That was the last card they could play. They played that card, and it was the biggest fucking calamity, and they'll never recover from it. It cost them so much. I don't think... it's going to be years, decades from now where it's clear to us what the U.S. empire and just everything that it lost. It will be like, it's just the golf tournaments and F1 now, and like stupid Met operas. Like that
F1
stuff
is canceled this year, bro. F1 is canceled.
I think we have to look also at the contradictions of empire. We can't just think about it as a nation building project and say, well, it's losing because, like Afghanistan took 20 years to replace the Taliban by the Taliban, but 20 years and $2 trillion. And that's before you even try to audit the Pentagon accounts. And those $2 trillion didn't go to Afghanistan, right? So you have to understand that it's this imperial capitalist base that's there to accumulate capital, to frack value out of social nature all over the world. And that counts as a victory for that unthinking, genocidal, accumulating machine. So at some level, it's not losing, it's winning. It's the famous Julian Assange quote that not winning the wars, keeping them going forever is the victory. And at the same time, inside that victory, because it makes money for shareholders, at the end of that is the final destruction of the empire as a political structure and its ability to impose hegemony over the world. And that's the inner contradiction of the system that it's reaching. And if you look at what the Trump administration is doing with this war on Iran, you can see it in real time. Like it's, I call it the empire of rug pull, because it's like, put a tweet out, pump the markets, and then, whatever, short the thing. And even Khalibaf is now has now been able to suss the thing and is giving investment advice to the capitalists. So in terms of capitalist accumulation, it is a great success. And at the same time, it is, as capitalism does because of its inner contradictions, sowing the branch of military, industrial, and ideological hegemony on which it was sitting. And what you're hearing in the background is the whiz is the sound of the saw coming to the last bits of the branch on which that empire has been perched for the past 500 years.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Benji, 100% about these internal contradictions of capital, and also I would say white supremacy, and I'll come back to that here in a moment as well, because Sina, I'm actually really glad you brought up the 7 Years' War in 1763. If we think about the recent history of West Asia, I feel like the most apt comparison to the 1763 moment would be 1993 for the Zionists, right? Oslo was kind of supposed to be their moment, right? Like it was supposed to be their moment to fortify, not just fortify, but solidify their existence in the long term, but they cannot help themselves with their expansionist project, and that is precisely because they don't see themselves living alongside next to Arabs, right? And so that is the contradiction of white supremacy, right? They got the resistance in Palestine, the most powerful resistance organization, to lay down their weapons, and they still continue to violate, right? So that goes to show you that these people, like, as you all have pointed out, like their blood is in their is in their, like, that's how they operate, right? That, like, war is in their DNA. And so like, and this is not to say that 1993 was going to be the end if there was, like, if everybody fulfilled, if the Zionists fulfilled their end of the bargain, because the resistance was going to continue, right? But like 1993 was supposed to be that moment for them, right? And instead, it has actually set the table for everything that has happened subsequently, right? So, like, I think we need to point that out as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because it's not that Israel commits war crimes. Israel is a war crime. It's not that America commits genocide. America is genocide. And someone in the comments was saying that the U.S. empire is just a bunch of Ponzi schemes in a trench coat. Yeah, like, so colonialism always needs some new thing to colonize. So, I mean, I haven't read Ali Qadri, but I've heard enough that it's like it has to find some resources to basically turn into waste for the metabolic system of capital, essentially for the stock market. I mean, in Sri Lanka, we have VOC coins. We don't have British coins around. It was always a market thing. And when you're talking about the costs of Afghanistan, the costs of Iraq, you have to understand the DNA of this artificial beast, which is double entry bookkeeping. So everything that gets reported in the press is, oh, we lost so much money, or we lost that. Okay, so that's showing up in double entry. Every credit has a debit. That loss shows up as a gain on somebody's balance sheet. So they have made money. And if you look at what they've done in the Middle East, that's really anti-competitive behavior. And what they're doing in Venezuela, why are they attacking other oil places? People say, oh, it's blood for oil. That's one way to do it. That's one way to do business. You can take over someone else's business. Another way to do business is you take out the competition. You make it impossible for the competition to function. And then that works as effectively. And since World War II, America's always been resource light. It's more to understand that even like early colonialism, they did it through corporations. Like the British Empire didn't come here until after. That it was companies that did it. So what they're doing, and you can see the strategy coming out, and people act like Trump came up with this. Of course he didn't. The whole strategy has been to either take the competition if you can, get the oil back that you had in Iran. That's initially what they wanted, what they had under the Shah, what they had after the coup. Or if that doesn't work, just cut it off from the global market. So that's what they... That was the whole, in Venezuela, just, okay, you don't need to take it, just cut it off, and then become a gas station with nukes. That is their sort of final Pokemon form, I guess. But you can see that Iran is changing that equation. Now, basically, Iran has opened the strait. And once those warships go, which they will once they get exhausted, it's a different equation. And then not only is Iranian oil back on the market, but everybody else's oil is going through Iran now. And so just to add like one last thing, what I see is kind of a return to the mean. So throughout human history, this is where the wealth was. And so the people here were kind of like lived better than Europeans. And there was trade around the region and it wasn't enforced violently. So it's returning to that mean. But also in terms of warfare, the mean was that like defender wins a tie. That you like attacking walled cities used to be hard, and then somehow through air technology that the West was able to change that. The empire was able to sort of overrule that basic lesson of warfare, which is that defender wins a tie, and they were able to be offensive everywhere. But now with tunnel cities and with equivalent sort of missile drone technology, the playing field has been leveled. And if the playing field is leveled, then of course Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz. They're there. And of course Palestinians like control Palestine. They're there. So things return to the mean. And you have to view like the white empire and colonialism as this sort of like brief, weird sort of interregnum in history. But now things are returning to the mean.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I don't know if we have to go soon, but I have a quick question for Sina. You brought up Godzilla earlier. It made me think of like, are the Ninja Turtles connected to Godzilla in any kind of way? It's like this, like the.
Oh, no, I don't think so.
Okay,
The Ninja Turtles are like a joke, I think, on like another comic or something. That like a character, they were kind of like a meme of another comic story. That's
Okay.
I read about this once. It's like, but no, it's not. It's an
Okay.
American creation. I actually have never seen the full Godzilla movies. I've seen clips and I've kind of seen, people alluding to them, but I had always known, or it was a kind of, I feel like it's like a well-established fact, basically, that like it is a kind of
it's not just Godzilla. It's like Akira. It's like like a lot of
Akira,
Japanese. Every Japanese anime, they like blow up Tokyo. Like it's a recurring trauma.
Yeah, return to the site of the trauma, and it just that's the thing. Like they like even if like let's like part of my and this is something that I played out in my own head. I was like, what if they did that to Iran? Like okay. Like
but there was a night I thought they would do it. There was a night I was like, what else do they have?
Yeah. So that's the thing Larry Johnson said on who's on Navid's show. No, not Navid's show. What's his name? Dialogue Works. Nima. My Wario. Someone said my Wario. I can't unsee it now. But like, so I think he said Larry Johnson said that like no, Trump asked for the nuclear codes, and the Pentagon Joint Chiefs basically said no, and like that's how it, like something like that. And I mean, anything
Larry
is
Johnson, you
possible
never know.
like it's. I mean, anything is possible with this administration, but the damage has been done for them. Even if they nuke Iran, like what can they do? It doesn't change. You just enrage them. Like you'll never get a barrel of oil ever again. You'll never anything. This is many times that people have done this. It's kind of like a lib thing to do, but you can do like a gendered paradigm. Like you can do like a almost gendered analogy to this. Like the U.S. and Iran have been caught in this like breakup for like 45 years, like 5 decades long breakup.
Yeah, it's like, bro, she doesn't like you. Just go home.
Exactly.
Doesn't like you.
The U.S. is a psychotic ex-husband that will not leave you alone. That its newborn, its precious actual like child is also psychotically obsessed with you to the point that it cooks up all insane murderous schemes to like get your attention and try to like spoil you and like pinky in the brain level stuff. Like this is the strange, unique situation, and this war. I've said this before. Like this war was like this desperate attempt to win Iran back, like not the Iran that exists in the revolutionary Iran, like not the not that one, but to change that and to create a simple Iran and to keep that one. But like that's not changing. There's nothing that will change that scenario. There's no package. There's no dirty war. There's no like unique force of Kurdish James Bond agents like who can achieve this. Like it's over for the U.S. It's simply over.
So guys, while you guys are crafting the most amazing analogies this side of the tanky universe, can I just say some people in the chat are asking to see my doggy, and I promised to show you the doggy. The doggy is right here. The next donation to Ameer, and you guys see the doggy. So, and if no donation, the doggy. No. If not. And more than this, and 2 donations, and the doggy gets the special doggy treat. So it's all in your hands.
We can do this with our pets. We can shame people into donating with our pets.
No, it's not shaming.
Just do whatever it takes. Do whatever it takes.
I want my dog to feel like he's done something to help our siblings in Gaza.
Yeah, next donation after that, I'll show you my pussy.
You ruined it, Indi. You ruined it.
I'm sorry. That was in my head for a while. I didn't say it. I'm sorry.
Oh, so that's how. Now you know the new head of OnlyFans. It's moved to Sri Lanka.
I just want to say, like, to your points, like, also nukes, they don't have the capacity and the capability to destroy the missile cities. So, even on a military level, the nukes, the only thing they're going to do is cause widespread human suffering and destruction, which is what the West knows best, right?
Yeah.
But the military,
which is the only thing that makes them feel better at this point. I mean, that's the thing. That's like when I play out the scenarios in all of this, is that I can see them entering a let's ruin the victory moment. And somebody once, this is crazy. I shouldn't repeat this stuff, but somebody once on my Twitter was like, wait till you see what they really want to do to the Straits of Hormuz if Iran like takes it over permanently. Like they'll do something and that nobody can ever pass it. And I was like, what? And I was like, what? Excuse me? What? They're gonna nuke the Straits? Is that what you're like? Are they gonna nuke this? Is it really? Are they gonna block? Is that what the plan is? But then I don't know. There's only this is not, again, it's not, the world is still the same. You still need oil. You still need all the things that come from this region. And Iran is the biggest actor in the region. They're the most enraged. They have no reason to be nice to anyone right now.
No
And
more Mr.
that's
Nice
it.
Guy.
Yeah, like that's it. It's like I don't like the sheriff analogy because it has the imperialist thing of it, of
Yeah.
like the Westoid, but in the sense that there's a muscular actor who, for whatever reasons, was hemmed in by the reality around it, but thanks to the imperialists and their lust for chaos, they changed that situation and alleviated Iran of the need to participate in like this ridiculous kayfabe of like, oh, Iran can just be blockaded for 40 years and then that's normal. So like that's like people cannot like not the bigger picture of all this beyond the destruction, like, oh, Khorram Shah this and that, like keeping Iran caged in, like a prison of US empire law, like imperial siege, that was a weapon of like, that was a more painful weapon. Oh my God, look at the beautiful
I was
fluffy
gonna say nobody loves the
doggy.
dog, but
Oh my
Anonymous
God.
loves the dog. Thank you, Anonymous.
Thank you everyone for donating.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks. Look, the dog already gets a treat thanks to your
Thank you,
generosity.
Anonymous. Thank you guys. This was the best.
You see
I'm
this?
gonna
We're
actually
helping
have my dog.
Gaza. Mm.
Daisy.
And
And through it all, like Iran, of course, has every reason to through all the provocations, through all of like the horrific attacks, Iran has every reason to be angry, as you say, Sina. And through it all, Iran continues to act in the utmost rational ways to undermine and defeat U.S. imperialism, right? To such an extent that they're making the U.S. act more and more irrationally, right? So like that,
Yeah.
I think that is,
Yeah. And it's also, and I was going to talk about this, but from the psychological and hegemonic side of things, because we're seeing it in Russia, we're seeing it everywhere. On one side, you have basically a genocide horrors, like you said war earlier, Navid, but it's not war that's in their blood, it's genocide. And on the other side, you have people who, in extremis, will resort to organized violence, also known as war, but always within very clear parameters. We're seeing it. Russia is not going after the civilians in Ukraine. Iran is not going after any civilians anywhere at all. The Palestinian resistance is not going against the civilian. And no, the Gaza envelope, which is actually Gaza was occupied by the Zionists from the partition land, was not civilians. And what we are seeing from this FPV drone footage from the glorious resistance in the South Lebanon is also not genocidal violence. And that siege also has been broken, and people are seeing it, and the fact that the propaganda from Iran actually speaks to the higher angels of our nature, if you like. And on the other side, so no more Mr. Nice Guy, and we're going to bomb you back to the Stone Age, and we kick an enemy when he's down, and all the rest of it is having an impact on the global, consciousness. That is not it's not just a nail in the coffin of imperialism. It's actually the stake being driven through its heart, which it needs to, because as Marx said, not metaphorically, it is actually a vampire that feeds off the blood of the working class.
And Putin also said that it's a vampire's ball. They've gotten used to gorging themselves on blood, but now that vampire's ball is coming to an end. You can see what all these like different places like Russia, Iran, China, very, very different, like ideologically, not even united ideologically per se, but they're just kind of uniting around a vision of the world where people kind of just live in the world and not in a giant like white supremacist empire that has to like either take everything or destroy what it can't take. That's what all these, I call it World War III, and I date it to September 11th, which is, you could just say Pearl Harbor, like whatever they Pearl Harbor themselves, however it works out the same way. That gave them the casus belli to invade multiple countries, which, I mean, I don't know. I think like Syria and Libya are kind of as significant as Czechoslovakia and Poland to me. And it gave them, and we have like a full-blown genocide and concentration camp. So I think we can maybe historically, since white people aren't writing the history anymore, call it World War III. But now what we have in Iran is effectively the Red Army, I guess the Green Army. And then what we have in Hezbollah is ground forces knocking on the door. And what we still have in Gaza is an unbeaten Hamas. And as Kissinger said, the guerrilla army wins if it doesn't lose. And Hamas is not lost. And then, as Navid was talking about in something that's news to me, but like you can see in similar liberation struggles in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, you know, it seemed impossible. Rhodesia was a thing that existed, and it doesn't exist anymore. And in the same way, we're used to Israel as something that exists, but I don't think it will anymore. And I actually don't think the United States will exist, like in my children's lifetime. Just
And
as
do
an
you know
aside,
why? Yeah.
No, go
Do you
ahead.
guys know why we're doing such long podcasts? Because we are practicing attrition podcast warfare.
Against our viewers. Oh, sorry. You guys want to watch a bit of Pinky in the Brain? I don't. Sina threw it up there. This is actually pretty good analysis.
It's so good. Kids will never know how good this was. We're gonna get copyright strike.
What you doing, Brad?
Oh, sorry.
We keep doing this.
Oh, Adnan, we're gonna get it like struck. Should we not do
Oh,
this?
yeah.
And I always forget to
We said we were going
No,
to
we shouldn't
ruin
do
this.
it. Okay, no, I don't want to ruin
play
this
the little
podcast.
video I have. If you don't know,
It'll
you
be
know,
okay.
for your friend who's got everything. If you're looking for a gift for friends who have everything, you can play the little video I put there. It's called the new toys. Can you see it, Sina? Yeah, I put it in the private chat.
Oh, and
Oh,
Hesp
okay,
has
hold
also
on.
done some AI slop, if you guys want to see that.
Oh,
Should I
Okay.
put the Hesp slop?
Where is that
Let's have the
window?
toys. Let's have the toys.
oh, the toys. Okay, hold on.
Okay,
hold on.
so you know, for your friends who have everything and you don't know what to get them for birthday, Christmas, Father's Day is coming, then our siblings in Iran have found just the perfect gift for all of you. Let's see if Sina can get it up. Good.
Oh, I have been sharing it. Sorry.
Okay. This was the sound. So that's the small size. That's kind of the, you know, the lady size. But you can also have the next size up. And did you see the propeller at the back actually can be turned?
But this is like the AK-47. I think, Benji, you were saying that. So maybe there'll be like some liberation movement, like maybe the Free Republic of UAE
On
will
their
have a
flag.
head on its
Yeah,
flag,
that's
right?
It's just, yeah, like we're watching so many things change. It's strange, you know, like you watch this Holocaust happen and it's still happening, you know, and the whole world was paralyzed, it seemed. Like we were all waiting, and then, you know, the South Africa case happened, and we were waiting for that. Like we were waiting all of these, like this kind of like waiting for like this, like, you know, Beckett, this, like waiting for Godot in the form of liberal internationalism to show up finally and like save us from this nightmare. And every day that it went on was like, oh, I guess today isn't the day when law comes back. Today isn't the day, like, you know, the belief that you have in like fairy tales that the world is a fair place, but you realize that, like, even if the system of laws that we create that are fictional at the end of the day, that there are other forces that equalize, that democratize, that figure out shortcuts that can't be that you know, imperialists have been using in overwhelming their, you know, like the people they're oppressing for centuries, right? That the power of stamping out people by the thousands doesn't get you what you want. And the fact that Zionists failed in their Holocaust in Gaza to accomplish what they need to accomplish with the ethnic cleansing so that they can expand their settler colonial Zionist project and extrapolate their worldview of like racial supremacy onto that land of Gaza and finish it once and for all, and see the chaos of those 2 million displaced people into Egypt all around, and see the chaos spread and laugh and, you know, like rejoice. Like that's not as things have gone for them according to this script, more or less, for 75 years, that their maneuvers, even if they failed, that there has been a forward progression of Zionism. Well, that stopped. That has stopped. Like the forward progression of Zionism is halting in its tracks. We are watching an actual quagmire in South Lebanon, a failed campaign of extermination in Gaza. You could not, short of showing up with boxcars on the non-existent rail lines, how do you move those million plus Gaza people in Gaza out of there? You can't. And they have not moved on their own. They're willing to exist in the conditions that they live in. They're willing to go on. The people of Iran didn't do as they were told. They were instructed to murder each other in the tens of thousands and overthrow their government. That didn't work. Syria took much longer than planned. And even at the end of the day, putting an Al-Qaeda guy in charge of Syria putting lipstick on a pig won't change the reality. Syrians look to their government as a joke. They're just exhausted and they can't really probably just do anything about it. So they'll take anything. Lost in
Yemen.
They lost in Yemen so badly that now
that was a
Yemen
naval
is a
defeat.
huge-
That was a historical
Yes,
naval
yes,
defeat. They defeated the U.S. Navy.
Well, but they also lost, like that was the icing to the cake. They also lost a 7-year dirty war. It's 7
and they
years? I
lost the
guess
land
no. Well,
war.
2019 they kind of wrapped it up, but they kept the fighting going for a few more years after that. And really, it was a bombing campaign mixed with
And that was
some
famine as well.
restraints,
That was
yeah.
starvation
That
as
was
well.
famine,
It was like
yeah.
a test run.
So it's like, it's the same. I mean, it's the thing. It's like the genocidal warfare that Israel practiced in Gaza. None of it individually was new. It was just it was the speed in terms of its tactical. Like, it's not new to torture people. It's not new to rape people and starve them. It's not new to kill. I mean, there are novel things in that strategy. There are technical achievements. I mean, whatever you want to call that in the field of genocide. That's probably one of the few achievements Israelis have to their name. But like that. But at the end of the day, all these things didn't get them what they want. And if they can't set up a tent in Lebanon, they can't overthrow the Iranian government. So I don't know. These radical shifts. It will take so long to just unravel this.
I think it's a return to. I think if you look at the 1900s, or is that the 20th century, or I get mixed up? But the 1900s, it seems like they're really
20th
just
century,
from 2001. They've been trying to sort of extend it. They've been trying to extend that century. And you can see that there's like a new century coming. There's new types of warfare. There's new people. There's new ways of thinking. And the Soviet Union fell in 91, and then it just happened to fall first. Like the U.S. one, I used to wonder why, because Khomeini like grouped. He also didn't like the Soviets, and I'm kind of like more, I guess, Soviet leaning now. But you could see that those were two sort of. Ploki called it the last empire, but I think it's really the penultimate empire. Like the age of empires is ending, and yeah, the age of like, God willing, people and like just people living together in the places where they are and not imposing. The idea of America imposing its will on the Strait of Hormuz should be as crazy as Sri Lanka, and like we're actually closer. It's just a bad idea.
So you guys are amazing, because both when Sina spoke and then Indi, the doggy was absolutely mesmerized, and this is the first time I see it. And he's saying, "Okay, that's enough now. Where's my night walk?" So I think it's enough attrition, narrative warfare for the night.
Thank you, guys. Sorry I was late.
Maybe give Navid a chance to say a few last words. My last
Navid,
words would be to thank Navid for joining us once again. Thank you, Sina, also for being such a gracious host in the absence of
like to his
Adnan.
neighbor, but yes.
Yeah, he's going when he wakes up Turkey time. He's promised me to call you up. in the middle of your night, so you guys will be
Hey.
even. And yeah, so Navid, anything you want to leave us with as your final
Yeah, no,
thoughts?
I'll just, again, thank you all for having me on, Benji, Indi, Sina. I concur with everything that's been said. I think that the U.S. is limited in its optionality. It's going to increasingly act in irrational ways. But at the end of the day, that's not going to change the material realities of the region. And Iran is proven to be waging a low-intensity war in this particular moment, and it's advantageous to Iran and the rest of the resistance. And I think, as we've pointed out earlier, what's happening in southern Lebanon, we need to continue to keep track of that, because that is a major, major strategic development. And so, just again, I say this in a lot of the podcasts I appear in. Despite all of the violence and destruction that these people engage in, people here in the West should despair not. The people in Iran are out in the streets every night, despite the violence that they face, right? And that shows that they're going to see this out until victory. And so we here in the West should also play our role and see this out until the victory of the resistance.
Exactly. And it might be less costly than, say, the French in Algeria or something like this. That's what I certainly fervently hope.
Yeah, I don't worry until the resistance worries, and they don't seem worried.
Thank you,
So,
guys.
Sina, you want to see
Thank
us
you,
out?
everyone.
See you guys.
Free
Thank you, everyone.
Palestine.
Thank you, everyone who donated. Thanks to everyone. Appreciate it.
Sweet
Cheers,
victory
everyone.
to the free people of the world.
Jang Ta Piruzi.
And the dog says thanks for showing him some love in the form of donations.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.